Hey guys, this is Seth from Dark Waters Fly Shop. I'm going to go ahead and do a tie flying tutorial for you today. It's a variation of a fly that I've already done. You can check the YouTube page for that. It was a smallmouth bass popper that in that video I didn't have a name for. I do now. We went with a pirate theme. It's called the Davy Jones. And so the variation I'm doing is going to be a pike or musky articulated larger version to that, and we're going to call it the Scallywag. I kind of like that. I'm going to go through materials for you, and then we're going to whip this thing together. Hopefully it'll go fast for you. All right, so I have done it on a couple different hooks. You can choose your hook size that you want, but it's basically a very basic articulated fly with one hook. The rear hook on this one that I'm going to tie is the Ahrex TP610 Trout Predator Streamer number 2. That's that right there. And you can go higher if you want. If you don't think that's big enough, that's fine. All I know is it's a very strong hook. You're not going to have to worry about it. I'm using some GSP. It's probably 150 denier on that. And other materials that we're going to use are really basic. Different colors of bucktail. You can go ahead and decide what colors you want to use for that. I grabbed some hackle that I thought looked cool with it. The popper head is the howitzer bait fish popper head. These are the larges, size large. I am going to use some 7-strand wire to connect this. The articulated shank does have a loop on it that you can connect, but I want a little bit more of a loop so that when this fly sits in the water, that's got a lot of movement. If you use the articulated shank and you simply connect that through the eye of the hook, once you get materials in there, I don't feel like it moves well enough. I'm going to put a bead on there. You're going to see that. And then for flash materials, I'm using some Ripple ice fiber in peacock and gold. And then I'm also using some Mirage flash as well that just matches in those colors. So let's get to it here. You can do this in any variation. I'm doing a taper down to the bottom, but there's a couple things that I'm going to do for you here to show you how I get the movement that I like out of this. I'm going to select some long fibers off the back of this bucktail here. I'm not going to reverse tie them like a lot of people do. The reason why is because I don't want bulk on the tail of this fly. So I'm pulling that. Going to get the guard hairs out. Pretty basic. Like I said, I'm not going to do a reverse tie. I wrapped this hook back to the hook point. I'm going to lay these over, kind of put them down a little bit in here. A couple loose wraps. I'm doing loose wraps toward the back, and then I'm going to come toward the front here and tighten it down a little bit. The reason why I did that was so that these would taper. I would have a thin taper in the back. I'm just going to go ahead and then trim this. I am not going to come all the way up to this hook point, because if I leave room at this hook point, the eye of this hook, this is going to give more movement ability in there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with some hackle. Pick a couple matching fibers here in this. I should have probably plucked these before I started the video. I don't have to waste your time. Grab these here. I'm going to lay these so when they lay together, they're going to kind of cross. They're going to wind up being pinned together real narrow. The reason why I do that is because when the water pushes around there, it causes that tail to kick really well. So, like I said, I'm just going to try to fly through this here for you. There's one. There's two. Gonna get those there, and I kind of want this to be pointed more. I'll do whatever I can to keep those materials kind of pushed back together like so. I find that if the back of the fly comes down real thin and it's longer, it has a lot more kick when I'm pulling it in. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the blend up a little bit. I'm going to grab some orange fibers. I'm going to lay these across, and I'm actually going to move my thread up just a little bit in this. I'm going to lay some of this in. I'm probably taking a little bit less than a pencil size width of bucktail in this. A little bit less than maybe a number 2 pencil or a Bic pen. I know there's a lot of guys that will think that I'm underutilizing this bucktail by not reverse tying it and stuff, but like I said, I'm not going for bulk yet. The bulk is going to come in the further up the fly that I go, and you'll see how that kind of flared out on me a lot. I'm actually going to take some loose thread wraps and go back and wrap up the back of this just a little bit more to keep that tapered. Okay, we're going to trim that down. Take that there. Put some more bulk on that. All right, then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in a little bit of flash, and then I'm going to put in some more hackle feathers. I'm going to take on the very back of this, this rear hook, and I'm going to take some of this ripple ice fiber in gold. I'm going to lay this back here, probably half of it, do a 50-50 wrap, spread it around. Put a little bit of it on the bottom there. Okay, then I'm going to come in with some of this Mirage Flash. Do the same thing. I'm going to do like a 50-50 taper. I'm going to pull some of these to taper them out just a hair. I'm going to do these on the sides, so I'm going to tip this up. Lay this here, almost like a lateral line, but I'm going to spread it out just a little bit more than that. Just kind of take some of those longer ones and lay them out. Wrap those in. Then the only other thing that I'm going to do on this hook is put in a couple more hackle feathers. And this, you noticed on the tail, I used some shorter ones on the very, very end. I'm actually going to use some longer ones here. The reason why is because when these kind of intersect with those smaller ones, they kind of come together in the end there. You get some really good action when they hit each other. They're kind of bouncing around on the back of there. It's one of my favorite part about these flies is that when they hit, when you get these things flopping around on the back, it really makes this come to life in the water. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the tail section. I'm going to whip finish that, and I'm going to put some head cement on there. And then we're going to go ahead and we'll come back to the front articulated shank part. All right, so now we've got this rear section done, and we're going to come in then with our articulated shank, and I'll go ahead and throw some thread wraps around there, get that started. the popper head, that howitzer popper head, is going to cover most of this shank right here. When you put this on here, you can do it ahead of time and just see where it's going to wind up. But we only have like a ½ inch of this shank that we're actually going to use. Sometimes I will wrap materials up further on there so that when I glue the head on, it's got more to hang on to. The adhesive kind of soaks into that, and we're able to do it that way. So I'm just putting this thread wrap on here, and then I'm going to take, I already pre-cut a piece of this 7-strand wire. I'm going to bring it and go through the eye of the Ahrex hook that we've got on the back there. I'm going to go 50-50 here with it. Again, the reason why I don't take this wire and put it, take this and just put it straight onto the articulated shank is I don't feel like it gets enough movement. When you have a loop that's that big, in comparison to this little loop here, you've got a lot more movement. The only other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these beads here and throw it on there to bring that together. It's not 100% necessary. For me, it just kind of helps stabilize the wire when I finally tie it all down. So I probably have like a 1/4 inch size loop on there. I'm actually going to put this 7-strand through my vise, and I'm taking, no, maybe not on this one. I have in the past. I'm going to move this. I'm actually going to move this shank down just a hair so that I can get in there a little bit better. Just like that. Okay, it's going to come in. I'm going to wrap this from back to front, making sure that, yep, just like that. Wrapping this back to front, keeping the wire, the 7-strand wire, one kind of on the top and one kind of on the bottom of this shank. And then when I get to the front here, I'm going to wrap this all the way forward. When I get to the front, I'm going to take both of these pieces of wire and feed them through the eye of the articulated shank. Need a little assist here. What the heck? There we go. That was a little tough. Same with this one. Coming all the way forward. Don't stab yourself with the wire. Just like that. Pull both of those tight. I'm going to wrap. This got out of control. Well, if this 7-strand wire is strong enough that I need to use the pliers to maneuver it on my hook and my articulated shank, it's probably strong enough that a musky is not going to break it off. Alright, I'm going to bring those back a little bit. You got to be careful when you're working with this 7-strand. Even if you're using GSP, it will cut it when you're doing your thread wraps. So what I usually do is I'll do like a loose thread wrap layer all the way back. And I get really careful when I get to the tips of this. I won't be surprised in this video if I hit some of those and my thread breaks as I'm trying to cut that through. No, I think I got it wrapped up pretty good now. All right, now the only thing left to do is to do another layer of bucktail. But what I did was, as you can see in this one, I started with lighter colors on the bottom, and then they move up and they get darker as they get to the front, where then finally there's like a big wing up here. The other thing that I do is that kind of works out naturally is this vise is in the way of me laying materials really well back behind here underneath. I kind of appreciate that, because what it does is when the fly's finished, it creates like a little V right down here. So when this thing's on the water, if you can time out your strips right, this thing will actually walk the dog a little bit, which is kind of a thing that I know a lot of guys are trying to figure out how to get their flies to do. That's the best way that I've been able to find out how to do it. So I'm coming in here, grabbing some more bucktail, getting a little bit thicker now. This is where I'm going to put a little bit of my bulk in. I'm gonna pull these guard hairs and just lay this down again, and then hopefully we're on our last leg here of getting all this dialed in. Couple loose wraps. Again, I'm not reverse tying any of this because I'm not trying to get tons and tons of bulk. This is a top water lure, and I don't need the water push is all going to be in the popper head, so I don't really need it to be inside the mass of the fly pushing water. I'm going to trim that down. Coming back. Now, we're only going to go to about here with materials, because that popper head, again, if I take that popper head and I push it on there for you, you're going to see that when I get to the front here, I've only got a little bit more to work with. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put in a little bit more flash. I'm going to darken up the flash, and I'm going to put in 2 more hackle feathers, and we're going to be pretty much done. So let's see here. I'm going to take, and I'm going to blend now this peacock blend with the gold ripple ice fiber, because as we get closer to the front here, just because of the blend that I want to do, I want it to get a little bit darker toward the front. So I'm just going to lay that in. I'm going to wrap it all the way around that shank. Wrap it in. Look around it so you can kind of see where it's fallen, where you want it. I'm going to pull this onto the bottom. Need some more flash down there. Okay. 2 more hackle feathers. I love the yellows. It's kind of my favorite colors. That and perch colors. It's just personal preference. I don't think the fish care as much as we do. I'm going to lay these in, and then I'm going to put some more bucktail on the front. The bucktail that I'm going to use on the front is going to be very thick. It's more of the hollow stuff, because I just kind of want to get a big flare right behind where I put that popper head. Before I do that, I'm going to lay in some more Mirage flash, and then we're almost home. These videos get so long. Okay, I'm going to spread that around on there. I like to be careful. I don't like all that flash to go on top. You see it, but I want to get some of it underneath too. As a top water fly, you don't want all your flash and all your looks to be on top. They're looking up from underneath the water at it. So keep that in mind. Make sure you get some of that flash underneath it as well. All right, one more thing of bucktail to go on here, and we're done. You can see on this bucktail, I'm not going to grab any of this under these long fibers underneath, but what I'm going to do is that where this stuff is really thick up on top, I'm going to grab a big chunk of this, probably the size of my index finger or something thick, and I'm just going to lay that in super, super hard on the top. This is a rather large chunk of thick bucktail. You know, you can see that. That's a pretty decent chunk. I'm also going to trim it when I'm done, but I'm going to lay this on top of here, and I'm going to let this, I'm kind of, you know, I guess I don't really have to spin it because I can get all the way around it and push it down and flare it out, but I do a couple loose wraps on the top of here. I'm going to work it around there, and then I'm just going to pull it down. Got to be careful with this GSP. If you pull it too hard, you're gonna cut it. It's gonna cut all that stuff and come off of there, but you do want to get it around there. You could do a Buford head on this, I guess, too, now that I see that, if you wanted to. Looks kind of cool. I really like these popper heads, though. I prefer these howitzer popper heads over the double barrel popper heads. I think in their design, they're easier to cast, even the big ones. For some reason, those double barrel popper heads, when I use those, they catch so much wind that it's really, they just get super difficult to cast. I have some friends that love them. Maybe you do. If you like those, you go ahead, feel free to use them. It's your fly. But that is pretty much it. I'm going to whip finish this. I'm going to throw a lot of head cement up inside there. But use these to catch quite a few fish and haven't really run into any issues yet. So we'll get this all glued up. You can put a little back here in this bucktail too, just so that's all there. I have another video on tying that first one, which I told you I decided to call the Davy Jones. That's that smaller smallmouth popper version of this in white. But now this being the larger pike or musky version, went with the Scallywag, just stuck with the pirate terms. But that's it right there. Both of these, you can see this one maybe a little bit longer, but that's fine. This head pushes water like nobody's business. Nice flare on the top of there. It's bucktail, super flashy. Got good hook gap on the back. This thing will walk if you can time it out right, and these hackle feathers kick like crazy. I like the reason why I did the loop on the back of there instead of just attaching it straight to the articulated shank is because this bottom half now has so much movement that it, if this gets wet enough, that'll sit in the water properly. But when a mouth comes up on that hook is hanging down, perfectly able to catch those fish. So check that out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the other video where I do the smallmouth popper. That'll give you that's a really quick tie, way faster than this one. But thanks for watching, guys, and hopefully you can put one of these together and land a big old fish. Thanks.